You're on your way to the art museum today to see, well, art. You walk inside ready to take in all the visual pleasures there are to offer. Exquisite, colorful paintings of mythological narratives, famous religious narratives recreated on the canvas, perhaps even tragic, historical narratives. Ooh, good form. Makes sense why they would want to capture that. Who doesn't like a nice arrangement of flowers? Or even a beautiful sunny day at the park? Okay, this one's a little confusing, but I like the colors. Oh, what time is it? Oh, that's part of the collection. Okay. So, how is this art? So join me now as we begin to uncover the who, what, where, and mostly why about conceptual art. Let's bring back our clocks. This is actually a piece by Felix Gonzalez Torres called Untitled Perfect Lovers. The piece consists of two of the exact same battery-powered clocks, starting at the same time, only to eventually fall out of sync and ultimately lose power. The artist conceived of this piece when they had just found out that their partner had been diagnosed with AIDS. So we can start to see the parallel of the artist's personal life being expressed in this work. But again, how did we get here? From the extreme skill set required to execute such idealistic and realistic vibrant paintings to two found objects placed on a wall and calling it art. It's kind of hard to explain conceptual art without touching on this guy, Marcel Duchamp. Many in the art world can't stand what he started. Many in the art world adore what he started. Love him or hate him, he's kind of the pioneer of all of this. In 1913, Marcel Duchamp began moving away from his usual medium of paint and be introduced to us what he called the ready-mades. This one, called Bicycle Wheel, is exactly that, a bicycle wheel attached to a stool. Duchamp began challenging ideas of art having to be aesthetically pleasing or based in beauty. He wanted to prove that art could be about indifference, and that the artist's role isn't necessarily a creator of objects, but could merely be an elevator of objects. Remember, this is the early 20th century. The world is changing in a lot of ways, and likewise, so are artists. We don't always need to capture realistic renderings. We have photography for that. Traveling is becoming quicker with the introduction of airplanes. And radio is spreading information at a much quicker pace than that of newspaper days. So, as you can see, humans are increasing their relationship with immediacy, and Duchamp was aware of this. Whoa, how's that for immediacy? It did indeed get some immediate reactions. This is actually Marcel Duchamp's famous, or perhaps infamous, fountain. Duchamp submitted the piece to the Society of Independent Artists Salon in New York under the disguise of R. Mutt. When the board of the society thought the piece was just a simple prank and deemed it as not a real work of art, Marcel Duchamp, who was on the board, immediately resigned in protest. Moving through the century and grabbing the baton from people like Duchamp, we had Joseph Kosuth, whose 1 in 3 chairs again had a lot of spectators wondering, how is this art? After World War II, through the 40s and 50s, there were certainly movements that challenged the expectations of art, movements like abstract expressionism. However, there was still a direct link between the artist's talent and craft and the actual art that was made, as if each brushstroke was a signature of sorts. Kosuth, in a way, eliminated this direct link. In 1 in 3 chairs, Kosuth moves away from the importance of optics in visual art and pushes the audience to question what meaning or ideas are behind the art. We're given 3 versions of a chair in real space, a photograph of a chair, and the definition of a chair, in an attempt to challenge the viewer on what makes a chair real. Considering now that the chair belongs to the gallery as a work of art and will most likely not be sat in again, eliminating its function, is it any more real than the photograph? Artists like Sol LeWitt begin to solidify this idea of conceptual art, going as far to say the idea itself, even if not made visual, is as much a work of art as any finished product. LeWitt begins to emphasize this approach that the idea is the focal point of the art, when he begins writing proposals and directions on how to recreate his art, so that artists or groups of artists can recreate the pieces over and over in various locations, proving LeWitt's philosophy in that despite the optical version of the piece being potentially ephemeral, it's the idea and the future executions of this idea that live on forever. Now that we've seen some of the folks that have pioneered this notion of conceptual art, let's get back to our original question. How are these works art? The simplest, however equally complicated answer is because the artist said so. See, conceptual artists realized that by placing any object in the context of an art gallery, for all intents and purposes, makes that object, well, art. If you're finding this notion a bit frustrating, you actually might be catching on. This is kind of conceptual art's intent, or purpose. Not maybe to completely anger you, but to provoke a conversation about what art's boundaries or even parameters are and how they can evolve and change. Now we can start to move away from this idea of is or isn't this art. If a work is placed in an art gallery by an artist intending it to be art, well then it's art. Now this just becomes a question of whether it's good or bad art, and what that means to us personally. Even so, subjectivity aside, throughout history, art's purpose has always been to act as a catalyst for conversation, and to build new forms of human socialization. Time and time again, these objects challenge our expectations, while encouraging new forms of critical thinking. And that's how it's art.